Welcome everyone again. And again, thank you for joining today's session titled Trade Data Upload Part 2. Earlier this month, we demonstrated how we can upload trade data, characterization and evaluation data to Genesys directly on the web platform through an Excel file. I have sent you a sample file via email for everybody who registered. If you want to practice this session in parallel to this demonstration, if you want to practice these steps, and also you can use the same file if you want to practice the first part. So we already have a recording published on YouTube of the first part, and it is a prerequisite if you want to follow the second part. Everything that we've covered in the first part, I will demonstrate again, but very quickly today, using the same data sample. If you haven't received it, also please type it in the chat and I can send it to you directly. What we also sent you and what you would need in order to practice the session directly are the login details. We have a test platform. It's called Sandbox. So it's imitating Genesys, but just for testing purpose. I shared with you an account that we are all going to be using in order to practice the trade data upload and throughout the year, all the other demonstrations that we're going to do. I will send those login details in the chat again. And I ask you to please log in. Just one moment. And also, I will stop sharing my screen and I will share the Sandbox platform directly so that I can show you how to log in. All right, just one moment. All right, so I'm here in Sandbox. You can log in pressing this button and then again this one. And you can type in the username and password that I shared with you in the chat directly here. I already have them saved. So it's helpdesk plus this number with the password I shared with you. And then we log in. Once you're logged in, you will be able to see this button here. If you click on it, you will see the My Dashboard submenu. This is from My Dashboard is where the upload happens. From the dashboard, you will be able to see, if you log in using the account I shared with you, the trade data menu here. And if you click on it, there's the dataset submenu and a few others that we will have a look at today also. Before I proceed by going into the dataset and continuing from what we did last time, I will share with you what we covered in part 1, but very briefly. So over here, we have the recording of part 1 that is split up into chapters. So last time we looked at the Excel file, the data sample, and we checked that the minimum columns that are required in order to be able to upload are present in this Excel file. And also we checked that all these accessions that are in the Excel file that we want to upload trade data for, that they have already passport data in Genesys. That's also a prerequisite. And the third prerequisite is to check that the minimum passport data that we looked at here, which is the institute code, genus name, accession number, that these are correct in the Excel file as they are in Genesys in order to do a correct matching and in order for the trade upload to be successful. So you will be able to revisit those steps in detail in this recording of part 1. The second thing we had a look at is we accessed the dataset publisher from the dashboard, and we completed the first step, which is basically entering the basic information about the dataset, step 1. And we went into a lot of details regarding step 2 of the dataset publisher. which is where we start working our Excel file directly on the web. We upload this Excel file and we see how we can start ingesting it, how we can start mapping it to Genesys, how we can map the minimum columns of inst code, genus name, accession number, how can we link those in Excel to Genesys data, and how we can register those accessions and check if that registration is successful, and how we can map a descriptor column by creating directly a new descriptor. We will revisit this quickly today. How we can preview what we've done so far. Even though our trade data set isn't yet published, we can still preview how it looks like. How we can map to an existing descriptor in Genesys. And we looked at different data types in parallel, coded data or numeric continuous data, and how we can also map numeric discrete data, so the different type of numeric data encoded. We didn't have a chance to look at dates, scale data, and other types, but we will do so today. So I will also share with you quickly the trade data sample. That's how it looks like. We said last time that the minimum information to be included in this Excel file before we proceed with the upload is the inst code, genus, accession number, and in case those accessions have DOIs, then also DOI would be a minimum prerequisite before uploading. We also checked the last 3 accessions here. We saw that one of them doesn't have a genus name. The other has a genus name that is different from all the rest. And we checked that in Genesys, this accession number is actually sorghum. So this accession here, genus for this accession is wrong. And this accession here, we checked it and it doesn't even exist in Genesys, it's not public. And we said that we will see how these behave when we try to upload the file, and when we like what happens to those in these circumstances. We will have a look at this also. So in order to do that, I will go directly to Sandbox again. I will go to the dataset uploader, which is accessible from my dashboard, trade data, datasets. Again, very quickly, to add a new dataset, you press here the plus button. You select the data provider. In this case, we are all using demo, but in a real account or in Genesys, it would be your GeneBank views code. The dataset title, we agreed that for practicing, we will use our names because we are all using the same account. So I will title it Sorghum Trait Part 2. The dataset version, we said that it could be 1.0 or the date of this year. It can be updated later. The dataset description is characterization of 190 accessions, etc. The date of creation is today. And we check that the date of creation follows the year, month, and then day. We said that the rights is usually the 4th one, but you can read more information about the rights of mentioning your data, which rights do you want to assign it to a copyright. You can read more information in this link. The language here is English. The source can be any publication, any journal, article that is associated with this data. And the crop here, we select from this list, sorghum. So this is very quickly what we did last time. And the next step would be to upload the Excel. Well, we can do it here by clicking this button and then upload file and uploading here the Excel. And this is where we were in step 2 last time. And we clicked on this link here that is titled Load Trade Data to Genesys. So if I click this link here, I see that Genesys has added this column here. So before proceeding with anything, before starting to map anything, we want to make sure that we link those accessions here in the accession number, that we link them to existing accessions in Genesys. So we want to make sure that this first column here is populated, is not empty. This is what Genesys adds as an extra column. So in order to do that, there's a few steps to take, and I will go over them quickly. We covered them already in part 1, but we will have a look at it again. So the first thing to do is to click here on the button Properties and make sure that all of these details are filled out. So it is the dataset crop is sorghum. The owner would be your gene bank. In this case, it's demo. The inst code that we're using here in this file is Ken 212. So Ken 212. And the default genus is sorghum. In the case of the genus, please write the first letter in capital. But in the case of the crop, when we're typing the crop, please write the first letter as lowercase. And then we click on Update. So that's the first step in order to link the accessions. The second step is the minimum columns, which are inst code, genus, accession number, and DOI, if it's available, have to be also linked. So in this case, in order to do that, I would click on the column title and make sure that in the first step, in describe your data, column name, that the column name is the MCPD title for the institute code, which is in this case true. It is already an MCPD, it's inst code, all caps. So I will press enter. And I will see here that the title has been modified to include inst code in all caps with the original column name, which is already inst code. You won't see here much of a difference, but you will notice it here in genus. So if I want to map the next column, that is genus, all I have to do is I click on the arrow here in order to move on to the next column. And I want to do the same for genus. I want to map it to the MCPD title in the column name section, not here. This title is what your users will see in the public data set, but here it's internal. So I type here genus all caps, that's the MCPD format, and I press enter. And I see here that my original column genus has been mapped to the MCPD in Genesys. I still have to do one more, which is the accession number. And I click. So in order to exit this dialog box, I clicked on the gray part. If I want to re-enter it, I click on the column title. And I want to map accession number. So I click here and I change the column name to the MCPD format of accession number, which is all caps accession. And then I click enter once. And I see if I exit this dialog box that it has been properly linked. So I still cannot proceed because this column is still empty. And this is the very first thing I need to make sure of before proceeding. So the very last step is to click here after mapping and after doing these steps, after mapping the minimum columns, is to click on link accessions. I'll try doing that. And you see here, there are, links, and there's this column is populated, which is great because it means that this data is being linked to an accession that is already existing in Genesys, which is what we want to do. However, Not all of these accessions in this file have been successfully linked because 3 of them that I showed you in the Excel file, 3 of them have incorrect data or have some issues. How can you check if everything has been successfully linked or not? You can use the filter pane here on the left-hand side. So in order to check if, you want to see which accessions have not been linked. So you, in this case, click on this button here to untick accession exists for now and only keep row not mapped to accession. And you have to click on apply filters. So the default is this. I untick the second one. I untick accession exists for now, and I keep row not mapped to accession, and then I click on apply filters. And you see here that 3 accessions that we talked about are not included. So what happens if I proceed and these 3 accessions are not linked? So what would happen basically is these accessions will not have any trade data that is public in Genesys, or they will not be linked to any trade data when we publish the data set at the end. They will not be included. The data set here in Excel has around, I think, 194 accessions. That's what we have in Excel. In Genesys, these will be excluded. So the final data set will show you that it has 191 accessions instead of 194. You can choose how you want to proceed when you see this issue happening. You can choose to continue with the data set and then upload and then fix those issues later. So you would be excluding these 3 accessions. And then you can upload them later as a separate Excel file. Or you can choose that you want to fix these issues and then re-upload another Excel file and redo this mapping again to make sure that everything is included. So this is up to you, how you would wish to proceed. For now, just for the sake of this demonstration, we will keep it simple. So we will proceed and exclude these accessions. So I will reset here the filter. So let's say that you discovered, here that, that your accessions are supposed to be 190, but they're 191, or vice versa. They're supposed to be 194 and they're 191. And you want to fix that. You don't want to proceed. What would you do? In this case, where you can go to the trade data set menu. So we're going back to our dashboard, or you can just click here on dashboard. You don't have to worry because everything you've done so far is automatically saved. So you don't have to worry about exiting this page. So you can just exit this page, go to data sets. And you see here, this is with the one I just did 6 minutes ago. I will enter here. And you see everything is saved. Next step. You can add another dataset file here to the one we already have. Or a little example here in Excel. Let's say I want to add 1 accession. Let's say I want to delete those from my sample. And I want to add accession number 7378C. It doesn't exist, but I'm just going to demonstrate how you can add an additional Excel file. And I want to save this file as trade data sample addition. So I go back to my second step and I click on add dataset file, upload file, click upload the Excel here. And you see you can load the trade data here for the first sample, and you can load the trade data to the addition, right? And sorry. The addition actually had, sorry, it had more than one. Delete. So this is the file actually that I uploaded. I uploaded more than one. There were some accessions below. So this is the extra accessions that I want to add. And I will have to apply the same steps to this file as I did to the first one. But then when I publish, eventually when I publish, when I finish those two, and I skip to step 3, 4, 5, they will be published in the same data set. So eventually those two files, those two mappings, when you move on to step number 3, they will be merged together. So they will be showing as a total number of accessions the way you want it to be, even though they are separate files in the beginning. But unfortunately, what that means is that you will have to kind of do the same work twice for the first file and then for the second file. This is why what we would suggest is that from the beginning, you could start uploading on Sandbox here, either on this account, or if you have an account in Sandbox and have permissions for your GeneBank code, you can start testing this upload in Sandbox first and start mapping the accessions and doing these checks and checking the Excel files and going back and forth in order to have a confirmed Excel file that you can work with that is giving you the correct accession numbers that you want to upload. And then our advice is, and then after that, you proceed with mapping, because here we have only like 10 descriptors, but usually your files might have like 50. So if you want to do the same work for mapping 50 descriptors for the first one, and then doing the same, but only for 4 accessions later, that's kind of double the work. So we always recommend that you start with the correct file, and that would set you on the right path, from the beginning. But there's always this option in case a mishap happens to fix it in this manner, and it would eventually, in the final data set, add up to your final number of accessions. But I'm gonna start then mapping descriptor types. Last time we covered coded values and leaf midrib color. So the coded values are categorical data, for example, color. We also had a look at inflorescence, compactness, and shape. That's also a type of coded value, but instead of using the category label, we are using a number. We also had a look last time at 50% flowering and plant height. So we had a look at different types of numeric data. We will have a look today at how we can map scale data, or how we can work this out. So scale data is basically a lot like categorical. It's a lot like coded values, like white, yellow. We here have low, intermediate, high. The only difference with the scale is that the categories come in a certain order. They follow a certain hierarchy. Low, intermediate, high. You might see those with other descriptors also. We can have these scale type of data also either directly using the label or using a number to express the scale. I want to map threshability to a descriptor. So all I have to do is the same as I did for genus and accession number. I click on the title of the column, and we had a look last time at this left-hand side. So what is this side? What are all of these? Basically, those are existing descriptors in Genesys. This software here tries to find, based on the crop name and based on the title here, matching existing descriptors in Genesys that could match your data in Excel so that you don't have to add another descriptor yourself. These already have predefined units, predefined type of data, scale, and predefined minimum and maximum values, and predefined also labels. So what do these values mean? This is existing in Genesys already. And you have a long list of those, either published by Genesys or published by different gene banks, because our partner gene banks, maybe some of you do that personally, upload your own descriptor lists in Genesys. We will have a look in later webinars at how you can do that. But you see here that this could be a good match because it is the crop sorghum, it is scale, which I know from my Excel that my data here is a scale. And the labels follow here the samples from my file. So these are all the allowed values in the existing descriptor. And these are all the values from my Excel, a sample from my file. If I have a look at this definition of this descriptor here, and I see that the labels actually match my values, that in my own data, number 1 is very difficult and number 9 is excellent, I have to make sure that this is what my data really means. If I'm 100% sure about it, and for that, I need to have the metadata of my file. So you can check with your Excel or PDFs or internally with the curators if 1, 3, 5, 7 really mean those values. So if they do, then you can directly click here on this existing descriptor. And you see here something changed. Genesys has linked your own column to this existing descriptor. And you can see that in the note here in blue. So you are no longer required to describe your data. You can just update the description. I mean, you already did as soon as you clicked on this existing descriptor on the left-hand side. So you would jump to the next step where it says that you are using the existing threshability descriptor for sorghum from Genesys. So it's telling you that you are using this one, and it links you to the descriptor in Genesys. So if you want to check out the definition of this descriptor, you can have a right click, open a new tab, and you see here more details about the definition of this descriptor, minimum, maximum values, unit of measurement, and what are the allowed values and how do they scale, and their labels. You also see what are the data sets where this descriptor has been used. I see a lot of you are already practicing, which is great. And the list from where this descriptor has been extracted. So this was part of a list of descriptors and some metadata. So I will close this new tab, and you see here that, you know, this is this descriptor is already published and cannot be modified. So if your data doesn't fit this descriptor, you cannot modify the existing one, but you can create your own, which we saw in part 1. But what we didn't see is if you want to disconnect. So if you realize that, okay, no, this I read the details of this descriptor, it actually doesn't match my data. My data is inverted, like 9 is very difficult, and I want to create my own. So you can click here to disconnect. Once you disconnect, you will revert back to the initial state that you saw, where the step number 1 is very detailed because you have the option here to define your own descriptor. We saw this last time. Define the labels, add, insert terms, etc., and update description. We did that last time, but for the sake of showing you how you can do it using an existing descriptor, this is how it works. And this is how you disconnect and maybe search for another descriptor. This second step is showing me also, after this blue blob, what is the descriptor I'm connected to. And it's telling me that some of the values from my file are not matching this existing descriptor. So I have to do some remapping here directly. I could, for example, say that this 85 is supposed to be 5. If I check with my data collector or my curator or the people who the source of your data, whoever collected this data, might know that this is supposed to be 5. You could, instead of doing it manually, you could try pressing the button guess, but it didn't quite work here. So we will try doing it manually, 5, and apply corrections. And you see that 85 now in my data is mapped to number 5 here. So I corrected it automatically. And the rest of my values do match. So it says here that all values match the column descriptor. So I already completed the second step. I clicked on apply correction, that's done. The third step is the most important one, because now nothing is saved here in the dataset uploader until I register the observations. We didn't have a look last time at dry run. Dry run is kind of like a test. Before you click on register observations, you can click dry run to kind of, in the background, check the registration before you actually implement it to see if there's any error. So if I click here on dry run, it says that all values are tested and valid. After I did that, I can register my observations, and I get here the message that observations are imported as this descriptor thrashability. I can here see that thrashability is linked to that new descriptor. I can still see here the 85 because I'm looking at my own Excel file. So if I want to see how the viewers will finally, after I publish, will finally see it, I can have a preview here by right-clicking View Dataset and opening it in a new tab. And I see here that, we have a list of accessions, and the descriptor we did today, we mapped, that is thrashability. I can also test here how my users can filter accessions according to their thrashability as a scale descriptor. So the scale descriptors in Genesys are filtered in this manner. You can slide the toggle here. If you want accessions between 3 and 7, you apply filters. And 3 and 7 are included, so it's inclusive. And so this filters out only 115 items out of 191 that have a thrashability between 3 and 7. You can always reset the filter. That's how the users would see it after you make this public. You can also filter by accession number. And you can also filter by a type of data that is not included in your Excel, but that is included in Genesys, which is the biological status of the accession. Because all of these accessions already have passport data in Genesys. I will, for example, open this link to this accession and show you this already has passport data. It has a germplasm storage type, etc. It also have a biological status. And perhaps this would be very important for the users who are trying to find certain traits for certain accessions. Maybe they want them to be wild or, breeding lines, etc. I will filter for traditional cultivars. So you see the number here shrinks to 93. If I only want traditional cultivars with this thrashability between 3 and 7, the number shrinks further. I will now show you how you can access the descriptors that you created from your dashboard. So if you click here on trade data, you will see the last menu is descriptors. We are now in datasets, but you can click here on open a new tab for descriptors. And you will see all of the descriptors that you own, that you create. Last time we did leaf midrib color and inflorescence, plant height, etc. We said also that for some of these descriptors, you might need an image to visualize, for example, the leaf, or for example, the inflorescence compactness and shape. We said that I will show you how you can add an image to this descriptor. But it's very important for you to know that you are not able to edit or add anything to the descriptor you created if it's published. So you see here, this is in draft mode. There are 3 different status to the descriptors you create: draft, in review, and published. As long as your descriptor is either in review or in draft mode, you can still go in and edit and add information. But when it is published, you cannot edit it no longer. So in this case, what you have 2 options. Either you send us an email to the Genesys help desk and you inform us of the edits you want to make and to which descriptors, and we can do it from our side. Or you can send us an email saying you would like to unpublish this descriptor and it will go back to draft mode. So we will unpublish it from our side. And once it's in draft mode, then you can do those edits yourself and send it to review. So this is very important to mention when you start working on the trade data files and you start encountering these situations where you created a descriptor here on the go and you want to edit it. So let's say I want to add an image to inflorescence compactness and shape. I have to make sure it's in draft mode. It is already. So if I click on it, I go to the basic information of this descriptor of inflorescence compactness and shape. And if I scroll down in this basic info, I can add the description. I can add the unit of measure, the citation, where this descriptor is defined. For example, it could be a publication by the FAO or a publication by your gene bank. I can modify the type. So if it's coded, well, if it's a yes, no, if it's a free text, I can modify the type here. And I can also modify, maybe I want to add, remove, or add a description for the vocabulary terms. Like, for example, here, I noticed that I have the code number 1, but the title should be the actual label, like the English label. So I will check this out in an existing publication for inflorescence compactness and shape. Just one moment. Usually in these kind of situations, it's better to split the screen in 2. Here. Just one moment. So I want to go to the actual Genesys website. And from my descriptor lists here, I want to filter for sorghum. So this is an existing published descriptor list for sorghum. And I want to here select inflorescence compactness and shape. You see here, the codes are supposed to be linked to their terms. In this case, it's not correct. And they need to have a description, a verbal description, or an image. I mean, in this case, a verbal description is very hard. The best thing to do is to have an image as a reference to these labels. This is what we have in the public Genesys website. This is what we have in Sandbox that I want to fix. So if I realize my mistake, then I can, from my source, let's say this is a PDF file, not actually Genesys, I copy the terms to their correct codes alongside their correct descriptions. We basically just have to copy paste, right? The correct titles to the correct codes with their description if they're available. So that's what I will be editing in this descriptor. This is manual, but you only have to do it once. Then it's saved in Genesys, and you can use this descriptor again and again. All right. So now I have my labels correctly mapped to their codes here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure also that my codes and my labels and my description, I mean, sometimes we have this type of title with all caps, with not much information for the users. We recommend that the capitalization of your titles and your description is user-friendly, and that it also matches the source of your descriptor. So now I want to show you how I can add this image. So from this image I have here, if I have it downloaded somewhere, what I can do here is I can just take it as a screenshot just to show you. So if I have my image here in my files, in my downloads, how do I upload it? If you are using a MacBook, you can just drag it, or you can click on, you can drag it here. If you are using Windows, you can remove the image. I showed you how, and you can choose files to upload if you're using Windows, and choose the correct image here and upload it. And you will see that now your codes and your labels are referring to a visual element, which is great. You can add units of measurement, etc. So now that I've did those modifications and added the image from here, from trade data descriptors, I can move on to the next step. This is just reviewing how my descriptor looks like and making sure that all the information is correct. And the final step is sending this descriptor to review. If I refresh, yes. So refreshing here would change the status from draft to in review. Once from our side, our team approves this descriptor, you will see the status would become published. So on our side, what we would be able to do is either approving or rejecting this descriptor. If you have any questions so far, please type them in the chat. I think we are we are at the end of the time allocated for this webinar. So we covered today how we can modify a descriptor that we created, how we can add an image, modify the labels, how we can map a scale type of descriptor to an existing descriptor in Genesys, and how that looks like for our users. We also saw how we can add an additional Excel file if we missed a few accessions, how we can add it to the same trade data set. So I will, before closing this session, I will wait a few minutes to see if anybody has any question before we close. Please type it in the chat. And of course, we will be sending you the recording of this part with the previous one and the invitation for our next session, which will happen in 9 days at the end of February, where we will go over some more mishaps and how we can handle them in this second step here. And also go over the remaining steps, which don't take a lot of time until you review and publish, send your data set to publication. So we will continue also the next steps. Thank you so much for joining. You can always send us questions to the Genesys help desk if you want to practice later, and any questions pop up, we're always here. And with that, I wish you a good evening or afternoon, wherever you are, and see you in the next one.